I was just sitting in my class thinking about all of the things that had gone on the day prior, and suddenly I noticed that the entire class was empty. It was at this moment that I looked next to me, and then I saw Sabrina sitting in a school uniform, which was kind of odd because my school didn't have uniforms. And then I heard sounds of footsteps coming towards the classroom. And then, to my shock and amazement, Vincent entered the room. Wait a minute, this can't be happening. What's going on here? I stared at him in disbelief as he slowly wrote his name on the chalkboard. And then turned to face us. Good morning, class. I will be your substitute teacher today. It was at this moment that I raised my hand. He called on me. Yes? Then I asked, what are you doing here? None of this makes any sense. He turned and looked at me. Well, you see, I thought you might be having some questions after everything that had happened yesterday. So, I decided to jack one of your dreams. Wait, steal one of my dreams? How is that even possible? He snickered and looked at me. I told you, I can do a great many things to the mind. This is merely one of them. So, what we're going to do in order to get those questions off of your mind is answer them. Now, let us start. He started up an odd projector as it started to project on the screen. The first question it came up with was, how does Vincent von Holt know my father? He took in a deep breath and then began to speak. Well, this is a very interesting question indeed. Actually, I've known your father and, well, your entire family for quite a few generations. I've been following your family line ever since the Helsing, if not earlier than that. I've been working with the Catholic Church for many years, training new hunters as they come along. But the entire time I've been training all of these new hunters, the Vatican has not given me my one request, and that is for my own personal assistant to train, instead of training their would-be hunters. But to answer the question more specifically, I met your father upon one of his hunts, and unfortunately he got himself in quite a nasty position, and I, well, had to save him. I took him back to the Vatican, and they set him to training with me. After that, he continued on with working with the Vatican, and I've been following your family ever since. Well, as I said earlier, I've been following you since, well, before your father. I was shocked and amazed. How old could he possibly be? But then he spoke up. Okay, on to the next question. The film rolled on, and the next question appeared on the screen. Why weren't your ears damaged during the entire gunfight at the warehouse? Good question. To answer that question, it gets a little complicated, but the more simpler answer is that once the gunfire started, the nanobots noticed the damage that was being incurred, so they sprung into action and they did their job. That's what they're there for, after all. This answer felt very oversimplified, but at the end of the day, I probably would have understood a more complicated answer than that. Okay, next question. And again, the film rolled and the next question rolled up onto the screen. How or why do people come out of Vincent von Holt's shadow? Well, the answer to that is quite simple, my boy. It's my own powers. The power over shadows and darkness itself. I can transport any being from any one point to any other point. With that, it makes my life a lot easier. I can summon anyone at any time to my side. It has come in very handy on many occasions. I also use it in case I find myself without the proper weapons. You saw me do this many of times. For instance, when I removed any number of objects from my coat, I'm merely reaching into a shadow and pulling out what I need from it. It's Ada's job to direct it, so I don't have to concentrate so much. But I don't need her to do it every time. It just makes things easier when she does. It was with this answer that I started to understand what he meant when he said he was much more than just a vampire. These are things that were never recorded that a vampire could do, and I kind of wondered how he was able to. But maybe that would be answered. "You look a bit confused there, boy," he said to me. I looked at him and said, "Yeah, this is all a bit much. I've never heard of anybody having such powers." He laughed. "Well, I am quite an individual. You won't find many like me. Are you ready to move on to the next question?" I simply nodded, wondering what other kind of questions could be boggling in my own mind. "All right then, let's see." Here we go. What are the shadow drive and the zero drive? Well, that's quite a complex question to answer, at least. Well, the shadow drive is a place where I store the nearly infinite power in which I can draw off of all shadows. And when I say all shadows, I mean not just from one dimension. I'm speaking from all dimensions. You see, there is an infinite number of different possibilities, and from each of them there are an infinite number of shadows for me to pull power from. And as is, well, it leaves my power almost infinite. But to be storing all of that power at the same time, well, that would be a bit much on any vessel I may be using at the moment. So, I have it all stored within the shadow drive. Now, moving on to the zero drive. The zero drive, well, that, uh, this question seemed to vex him slightly, and so I waited for him to give me an answer, at which point he merely looked up and said to Sabrina, "Sabrina, would you kindly answer exactly what the zero drive is?" She stood up from her desk and stood in front of the classroom, even though I was the only one in it. But then she began. "The zero drive is the exact opposite, or should I say, Father's other half's power source. You see, it is the eternal balance. Where there is shadow, there is light. Where there is the shadow drive, which is powered by shadows, there is the zero drive, powered by light. But Father cannot access it, as it is not a drive meant for him. It is meant for his other half." "His other half?" I asked. "Yes, that's kind of a sore topic. We don't tend to talk about it." Vincent's face seemed to scowl at me. Damn right we don't talk about it. Wow, such language from him, that was a bit hard. He grumbled. "Alright, on to the next question." He looked up at the screen. Now this is a very interesting question, and fairly simple to answer. What happened to Michael and the guard that was standing guarding the floor beneath him? The answer to this question is quite simple. They were reabsorbed into my shadow. You see, all of my children are merely fragments of my very own shadow. And, well, me being as powerful as I am, all of my children reflect that. Each in their own way. Sabrina, being a master of dance, she is also a very skilled assassin. Trust me, you wouldn't want to get on her bad side. I took a giant gulp, taking a look at this beautiful girl and only imagining how easily she could eviscerate me in a mere second if I said something that upset her. Alright then, well, you seem to be getting a bit tense at that last question. Let's move on, shall we? The next question, much like the others, appeared on the screen. It kind of fits with the last question. Let's see. What made Michael think that he could use the shadow drive to be more powerful than myself? Well, the answer is quite simple in a way. Michael had no idea of my full capabilities. Few of my children do. The only ones that really do are my daughters. My sons do not tend to know the full extent of my strength, for very good reasons. And as such, he thought that he could use the shadow drive to destroy me. Unfortunately, he was wrong. This has sadly been a mistake that many of my sons have made. My sons tend to fall in one of two paths. Either A, they become the nostalgic super uber hero goodness, or they become, well, the darkest villain you've ever met. Unfortunately, Michael was the latter. Alright, enough of that. Shall we move on? We're not seeing many questions. It was at this moment that Sabrina raised her hand. Father, I have a question. He looked at her and then said, Yes, my dear daughter, by all means, please ask your question. She turned and looked at me and said, Do you have a crush on me? But I got so tense, so nervous, I could feel my heart pounding, and then the walls and everything else started to shake. Oh, it looks like you may have asked him something he really didn't want to answer, my dear. It was at this moment the walls came shattering down around me, the very fabric of everything just falling apart. And then my eyes opened up, and I awoke in my bed. Hello, and I hope you enjoyed this story. It was, well, a bit shorter than the others, but I hope you all enjoyed it just the same. If you enjoyed it, please hit the subscribe button and the bell notification so that you will be notified when I post the next one. I hope to see you all very soon, and I wish you all very well.